And welcome back to Moving Conversations. I'm Brian Ritchie. Joining me as always is Nora St. John. Good morning, Nora. How are things for you?
Quite well. I'm out here in California, and my brother's visiting from where he lives down in the Bay Area, and he and Al are working on a table. So there's a lot of
Oh,
woodworking talk going on, a lot of engineering chat happening.
fantastic. Fantastic. You and I both just got back from
Yeah.
Korea
Yep.
and long trip. I don't know how the jet lag is hitting you, but man, it is kicking my butt this week.
I'm still recovering, man. I kept thinking, oh, I'll feel better tomorrow. It's like, well, a little better.
You know what? I don't know if you've discovered this, but sort of the older I get,
Yeah.
the first day I'm back, I'm fine. Second day I'm
Oh, yeah.
back,
That's not
not too
me.
bad. It's like the third day,
Oh.
which was yesterday, I was walloped and I was
Oh.
just sort of sitting here and it was my busiest day at work and I'm sitting here and my
Oh
eyes are
God.
glossing over and I'm thinking,
Oh no.
okay, how many more hours do I have? Okay, I can make it. I can make it. So yeah, that was my day yesterday. Today I'm feeling a whole lot better. But
Oh,
yeah,
boy.
it was a slog. And I keep telling my boys by the end of the evening, it's sort of like just I'll be fine by the end of the weekend. I'll be
Yeah.
fine by the end of it'll all be okay. But man, it's 13-hour time difference can be a trick.
Jet lag is real. That's all I can say. Jet lag is real. And, and
It
and it's
is.
also for me very unpredictable. I mean, I've traveled, a whole bunch, and sometimes it's terrible, and sometimes it's fine. It's
Yeah.
like it just really varies wildly, which is just annoying.
Yep.
It's like why is it bad this time and not bad this time? And you come back and you're like, oh, I feel pretty good, like you said, I feel pretty good for a day or two, and then it hits you, or else I come back and I'm toast for 3 days, and I just can't. I don't know. It can go any different direction.
Yeah. So if our brains seem a little slower today, you'll understand why. We're we're
We
still on
got
Korean
lag.
time. We're a little lagged. We're a little lagged. It's okay. It's all right. Uh, Today we have an interesting topic. We're going to talk about headaches, but primarily tension headaches and how movement can actually
Mhm,
help with that.
mhm.
But before we do that, do us a favor, hit that like and subscribe button. We really appreciate it. Whatever platform you happen to listen to us, check us out on YouTube under my name, Brian Ritchie. You can always see us and see us in person, or in person on video at least. And there's a lot of times we're explaining things or we have anatomical models and things like that. So it's kind of neat to be able to actually view this. So you can always do that through our YouTube channel. Also, check us out on Instagram, Moving Combos, or hit us up on our email, movingcombos@gmail.com. And we have an event coming up, don't we, Nora?
We do. We're going to be at Blue Moon Pilates in Mission Viejo, so Southern California, Orange County area. September, I believe it's the 13th and 14th. Do I have that right? My dates.
Yes, 13th and 14th. I
Okay,
had to look
good.
too. I'm thinking I'm not looking at a calendar. Yes, 13th and 14th.
And we're going to be at Blue Moon Pilates, and you can look at Blue Moon Pilates on the web. We'll also send the links down for registration. And we'll be
Yep.
doing a whole day on the low back. And this is going to be a little theory and then a lot of practice, both from a personal training perspective and from a Pilates perspective. Then we'll also be doing a 3-hour course on the upper body, on the shoulder, and a 3-hour course on osteoporosis. And again, our goal here is a little bit of theory and a lot of like, this is what you can do. Here's exercise protocols. Here's some ways to put together a program. Here's some things to be aware of. And it should be super practical and super fun. So we hope some of you guys will come and join us in Southern California.
And that's really what Moving Conversations Live is all about. When we do come live to a studio, a lot of times we can only do so much uh, on the audio sense
Yeah,
or even a little
absolutely.
bit on video. So it's a lot of theory with a little bit of practical trying to explain. But when you see us live and in person, there's so much more practical. I mean, in Korea, my
Yeah,
classes were probably 20% theory and 80% movement, 80%
yeah,
practical knowledge on how to take that theory and put it into your practice, not only your
exactly.
body, but your client's bodies. So if you're in that area, or if you'd like to come and join us, please do check out Blue Moon Pilates. All this, everything will be in the show notes. And if you'd like us to come and teach in your studio, hit us up at our Gmail account, movingconvos@gmail.com. We'd be happy to talk with you and go forward from there. All right,
Absolutely.
let us dive
Ready?
in to headaches.
Okay. So the first thing we wanted to mention, Brent and I talked a little bit about this, is we want to make a distinction right off the bat
Oh
between
yeah,
migraines and tension headaches.
yeah,
Migraines are a whole nother kettle of fish. Neither of us have found that movement solutions are really the way to go for migraines. Maybe some of you have other opinions, which would be great, but most of the people that I know with migraines manage it with medication of various kinds, sometimes prophylactically, sometimes, sort of in an emergency situation, and oftentimes by like putting on a face mask, getting into a dark room, or sleeping. So we just want to make, kind of get that out of the way right away, that I haven't found good movement solutions for migraines. Tension headaches are a whole different story. We just wanted to kind of make that distinction right off the bat.
yeah. With migraines, I highly, highly recommend talking to your physician. There
Yeah.
are many treatment options, not only medication wise, but there's also people are using Botox into actually their trapezius, the mid traps, as well as the upper traps. And that I've had a number of clients do that, and they say it is a miracle. For 6 months, they
Mm.
have no problems whatsoever. They said it is just the biggest miracle they've ever discovered. So, and again, I'm sure everybody is a little bit different. I have a staff member
Yeah.
who, when she gets it, she gets these eye migraines. And basically, like you said, dark room, no
Yeah.
stimulation, just has to
Yeah.
be completely shut down. And it's the only way. And usually 24 hours later, she's fine. So
Yeah.
everybody's got a little bit different, approach to it and how it hits their bodies.
Yeah, absolutely. So tension headaches, however, are a different
Yeah.
story
Mhm.
because this comes into, and Brian and I are talking a lot about the elements of tension headaches before we started. And some of it is, how do you hold your head,
Mhm.
right? How do you hold your head? How do you use your eyes? How do you drive? How do you sit? How do you work on your computer? How do you work on your phone? All those chronic or habitual positions of your head and neck can really contribute or not contribute to tension headaches.
Yeah. And I kind of wanted to talk about this a little bit because when we were in Korea, I was suffering from quite a bit of that. And what I
Yeah.
find with myself is a lot of it's very muscular based.
Hmm.
Uh, because for me, it starts usually in the back, wraps around. Sometimes it gets in through here, through above my eyes and through my, the temporalis muscle. And you can really feel almost like I'm wearing a headband.
Uh-huh.
And you're right. If I sleep on a weird pillow,
Yep.
puts my neck into a funny position and the neck muscles get tight. And all of a sudden I feel out of alignment, or my head's slightly cocked now. And I start to try and right my head. And all of a sudden certain muscles are tighter, certain ones are stretched, and it can really affect how I feel. And everything tightens up, and that can last days and days.
And thinking about, what you've been doing the last couple of weeks, like some of that was sitting on an airplane for 12 hours,
Um,
which is, rarely a comfortable position for the head. I mean, just, because you would like to be sleeping and you're often not sleeping, or you're kind of here and wherever you are. That certainly doesn't help. Also fatigue, right? Because fatigue can just create more tension and more irritation in any kind of area. And one thing that I often think about is, you talked about it starting in the back of your head, right? Like that feeling, like it starts kind of at the base of your skull, like
yep.
at the back there. And there are little tiny muscles. There's 4 little tiny muscles back there called the suboccipitals, which are small muscles that attach the skull to the first and second cervical vertebra. And these are not always the roots. Sometimes like, people can get, like, the scalenes can be really involved. Certainly the traps can be, and the more superficial muscles can be involved. But at a deep level, the suboccipitals are really, like, they really moderate or control that interface between your head and your cervical spine at the deepest level. Um, and they also are very reactive to whatever your eyes are doing.
Mm,
So, when your eyes track any direction that they track, the suboccipitals are gently adjusting your head, right, to respond to whatever your eyes are doing. So the 2 things I wanted to start with thinking about was how, every movement that you do with your eyes immediately affects those muscles affect everything else around it. And sometimes a discontinuity or lack of good communication between the eyes and those muscles, or something that's just habitual and funky, can lead to discomfort in that area.
These muscles I've when I teach classes on this, I say are my fine tuning
Absolutely.
muscles for head
Yeah, they're not
positioning.
big ones.
No, it's
Yep.
kind of like if you've ever, for those of us who are our age, remember televisions that had those big old rabbit ears that the first thing you had to do was get them in position so you could see any picture whatsoever. And they were large movements where you're moving them all around. And then when you started to see a picture, you would hold it in place and then you would move them small amounts, fraction of an inch here, fraction of an inch there, because you could lose the picture really easily. And those are sort of those muscles that I put into that category, that they are those fine tuning, those small, fine movements, not the big gross motor movements, but the real fine tuning movements versus, our trapezius or some of the larger muscles of the neck.
And if you're watching us on YouTube, or even if you just are looking at a friend and you're talking to them, you'll see all the tiny little head movements that they do just in ordinary conversation.
Yep.
Right. And especially if you're reading, let's say you're reading something, not that people read as much anymore, but and your eyes are tracking from, at least if it's English, right, from left to right, left to right, left to right. Just that action alone will have those muscles very lightly responding.
Yeah.
And so this is one of those things where that relationship between the eyes and both the deep muscles of the neck and the rest of them are some of where we go when we think about how to manage this from a movement perspective.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. So if you have someone with a tension headache, where's the first place that you would start usually?
Where I usually start is two things. One, remember, I'm also a massage therapist, so
I was
sometimes
just
I
going to
actually
say,
will do some hands-on stuff,
yep. Really
and or
smart.
teach them how to do some hands-on stuff.
Yep.
So oftentimes I start with the occiput. Like I start,
Yep.
right up at the base of the skull, whether it's my hands, their hands, or there's a lot of really wonderful, like, sort of double tennis ball toys, right? That'll
Yep.
have somebody lie on that and just get pressure right up at the base of the skull, and close to the spine on those big kind of erector spinae bands and up into there. And just kind of rest on that, let that relax. Because that's oftentimes where the tension builds up, is up along all those muscles that attach to the occiput, right? Which is
Yep.
all the back muscles, the back of the neck muscles, the shoulder muscle, like all kinds of things attach onto there. So that's usually where I start, is just trying to release that, either again manually or with like balls or that kind of thing.
I completely agree. I teach all my clients with their own fingers that they can
Yeah.
even lie down, make little hooks with their fingers, especially the middle finger, and
Yep.
just find that point and really relax the head against it. A device that I came across years ago, little red, things that look like mountains, called still point inducer,
Uh-huh.
which you can still get online wherever you happen to shop. But just to have them lie down on it, and even just that pressure. And I mean, I've used the tennis balls, I've used many different things, but just that gentle pressure of them relaxing their head on there can make a huge difference.
Yeah.
And
And yeah.
I,
And
I
it's
I agree that doing some manual work on their own, going up and down, but sometimes it's just getting them to relax on it can make a huge difference.
absolutely. And that's where, again, still point things. There's some little wooden knobby things that
Oh
work.
yeah,
Like there's
yeah.
all kinds of little tools out there. Or again, so I've actually taken like two tennis balls, put them in a sock, and then kind of taped them up
Yep.
and put them there. So lots of simple ways to do that. And this is about, again, the key thing there was relaxation,
Yeah.
right? So yes, there are movement things that we can do, but before we do the movement things, we have to get the area relaxed enough to actually change its pattern. And so that's really where the release work is the first step. And then we can start to do, movement, change postural patterns, change eye patterns, all those kind of things.
And something I'm going to make mention here that I find, if you're lying on something like that, and I used to make these for clients, is take two tennis balls or two lacrosse balls, stick them together, and then use medical tape and
Yep.
tape them together.
Yep. Like a little figure eight.
Yeah, and I would put it there, show them where to put it on the basically on the occiput, but then put them into slight flexion in their neck,
Yep.
just
Yep.
slight. So
Yep.
you're extending the back of your neck. You're really trying to stretch out the back of your neck. And I tell them, you're only talking about an inch. You're not talking about going into my chin all the way tucked to my chest. It's just to elongate the back of the neck just slightly. And that can make a huge difference in getting them to actually feel some relaxation and getting them to take some deep breaths. So
Yeah.
that positioning I find is very important.
Yeah, just to open it up, right? Open up that
Yes.
space between the bottom of the occiput and the cervicals, because that can, it can get really compressed in there. Yeah, and you've got sometimes a little flexion is what opens that up and allows you to get access to it.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. The second thing that I'll often do is there's an exercise that Brian and I both love with some kind of a soft, semi-inflated ball. Our
Mhm.
preference is a ball called a togu ball, just because it's big enough to kind of create like a halo around your head. And to lie on that, again, minimally inflated, so you're not
Right.
getting head pushed forward. And then just very gentle neck motions, keeping your head back against the ball, just so you're very gently moving up and down, side to side, little circles. Can be also very relaxing and very calming for the nervous system, but it also helps to stimulate some of the neck muscles, and also
Mhm.
helps with people who have a forward head to kind of bring their head back on top of their body and just reorganize the musculature of the neck.
That ball I love because of the way it feels. Now you can use a Pilates ball that's mostly deflated or a yoga ball, one of those 9-inch balls. I find that
Mhm.
if someone with a smaller head, it works better on for. I got a big old noggin, so the Togu ball is a little bit larger. I use that. And what I try and explain to people is I love the buoyancy because they can
Yeah,
really relax. Unlike a pillow where people just collapse into this, the muscles have to work just a little bit to sort of orient themselves. But once you get into position, there's a buoyancy there that I literally watch people just, you can see them sort of melt into the ball
yep,
and they're taking their breath and they say, oh my gosh, I've had a number of people say, can I sleep on this? This is the most
yeah,
comfortable pillow. And I say, well, you can
exactly.
try.
Until
If
you
you
roll
turn it
over.
all, you're probably not going to feel too good when the ball slips out from under you. However, it does feel really good to just lie there and relax those muscles. And you can do a little bit of flexion, you can do a little bit of extension, a little rotation. And if you need to train some retraction, that's a great place to do it because you can just push gently back into the ball. And again, depending on the person you're working with or yourself, start pushing with small amounts of pressure and begin to
Mhm.
increase it a little bit more as you're getting stronger. Because I have to say this, and I'm going to say this a couple times during this podcast. These are very, very, very small muscles. They are
Yes,
highly reactive. If
yes.
you overtrain them and do too much at one time, you're going to have a reaction the next day that may not be very pleasant. So I always say start with less than you think you should and work your way up slowly because they are very reactive muscles.
And this is where I think the ball really helps a lot, because having the support under the head. So I always picture it's like a little fluffy halo pillow, right?
Yep.
And just that gentle motion, not to the point where you don't go to end range, you don't feel any strain at all. It's just letting yourself float through the muscles of the head, up and down, right and left, little
Yep.
sides. And really it does reset the nervous system. As you said, people always feel like they want to go to sleep. I've had people fall asleep in sessions doing that,
Yep.
right? They're just like, oh, they just like eyes roll back in their head and they're done. But that is working the muscles again closest to the bones. We're not working the big muscles that move the head in big
Yep.
angles. This is just working, and I always think of it as kind of reorganizing those muscles closest to the bones. So the
Mhm.
suboccipitals, also just even the interspinalis, the intertransversarii, the little tiny multifidi in there, and just helping to connect to all those subtle movements that the head does all day long, but doing it with a little bit of consciousness and a tiny bit of resistance. The ball does provide
Mhm.
a tiny bit of resistance. It doesn't feel like resistance, but just a tiny bit of like awareness into that area.
Mhm. Yeah. Something that we should probably talk about, since we are talking about doing possibly a little bit of retraction there, is we're going to get into posture in a minute, but thinking about with the head and neck, protraction and retraction, because so often we
Mhm.
see people with poor posture, especially if they spend a lot of time at computers, with their head in, sort of jutted forward. And when they jut their head forward, that suboccipital area really does become really crunched down. Those muscles
Yeah.
become very shortened.
Yep.
And they're not the ones meant to hold your head up, but suddenly it's becomes their job almost. So they're helping to really hold your head as it wants to dip into your, and tuck down into your chin. But those muscles are holding on so tight that eventually they get over tight and overstimulated.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And the other thing about those guys is when you think about forward head, and this is something people don't always think about. Forward head, we often think about as being kind of I don't know what's happening with the neck. And oftentimes the lower vertebra are more in almost in flexion.
They are
And it's
inflection.
just the
Yep.
upper, like 2, 3, typically 1, 2, 3 that are in extension and sometimes
Yep.
extreme extension. And
Yep.
that's really where you get that shortening from the occiput to the cervical. And that's where those occiput get into real trouble on that one.
Yeah. Yeah. When I was literally just teaching a class on, upper cross syndrome, we were talking about posture with the
Right.
neck. And really, protraction is that it is lower cervical being in a really almost hyperflex position because it's so far forward.
Yeah.
But our heads, we have something called a writing reflex where our eyes want to meet the horizon line. So we're not looking at the ground. So guess what? You have to look up. So you're in that forward flexion with the lower cervical, and then your eyes meet the horizon and lift up. So that upper cervical becomes so extended and crunched down. And I don't know if you've ever done this experiment, but you hold a heavy weight with your arm extended out, and you're not going to be able to hold that for very long. I went to Catholic school, and that used to be a punishment. You hold books in each hand with arms extended. It's one way for the teachers to get you to listen and focus, and it did the job. It did the job. Your shoulder starts burning quick. But if you think about it, that's basically what's happening. You're taking this bowling ball in your hand, and instead of, holding it closer to your body, you're now extending it away from your body, and the muscles are going to get so fatigued. They really are going to get fatigued fast.
So thinking about this in terms of posture, right? So now we're kind of moving into posture here. One of the things that we look at is forward head, right? Especially for tension headaches. So if the head is forward even 15 degrees, so right, if your head is right over your rib cage, it's like 10 to 12 pounds. That's kind of what the head weighs. To come forward even just a small amount, like let's say you're looking at a magazine that you're holding up in front of your face, not one that's here, but one, that's here, just a little bit, 15 degrees, that weight goes to 27 pounds.
Yep.
So it doubles with just a slight tilt forward of the head.
Yep.
And if you think about how much time many of us spend, and if you've ever been in a group of people, they're all on their phones and their heads are all forward,
In their lap.
that doubles the weight, right? 30 degrees, you go to 40 pounds.
Yep.
45 degrees, you go to 50 pounds. So you think about that for an extended period of time. What are these muscles going to do? They're going to get tighter and tighter and tighter because they're having to resist that head falling forward for extended periods of time.
Yep.
So that's a lot of where training the head to support that and training the head not to do that are really important for tension headaches.
And that's something I really want you to focus on with your clients, is getting them to be in better ergonomic position when they're doing things like using their phones.
Yep.
Because I've told the story many times. I was at an event with my kids, and it was for them. It was Cub Scouts. And I could tell you to a child who had a phone and who didn't by their posture. Everybody who had a phone, their heads were already tilted severely forward. They were looking down. They didn't have a phone in their hand, but they already had poor cervical posture. Whereas the 1 year younger kids, their heads were upright. They looked straight ahead. And it was astonishing between the age difference. Cause like 12 years old is when I found a lot of kids got their first phone at that
Yeah.
age. And 11-year-olds all had good posture. 12-year-olds, all their heads were tilted forward and looking down. And I thought, oh my gosh, this was ridiculous. And
That's
that's only
wild.
going to get worse.
Such a wild story.
Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
only going to get worse as they get older, because because we're not just talking about the muscles, but we're talking about the ligament structures. If those get overstretched over a period of time, well, these kids, it's not going to happen right now. But if you do that for 10, 15, 20 years, By the time these kids are 30 years old, they've been in a forward head stretched position. Those ligaments are nowhere they doing their job like they should anymore. They're not holding their head up anymore. It's all
Well,
muscle, and then they're going to have more issues.
yeah, and then as we talk about sometimes in terms of fascia, right? They build their myofascial suit, and we build it
Oh,
when we're
yeah.
young, right? We build it as we grow, and if you build that, then you build, weakness in the front and length here, and you build shortness in the back, and changing those myofascial patterns, because it's not just the muscles, then it's also all the fascia that will start to conform
Yeah.
to that shape and shrink things up and decrease the ranges of motion of those muscles, and it can
Yep.
take a while to really reestablish a appropriate range of motion in those areas.
Yeah.
So yeah, think about that with
Yeah.
your kids. Make them stand up straight. Put books on
Oh.
there.
I can't tell you how
Not
often
books in their hands.
I'm going to brag on my youngest son for just a moment. He's in the school band and they had a recital, whatever you want to call it. And I was watching all the kids, and every one of them, their back was against the seat back. They were all slouching, playing their instrument. He plays the clarinet, and I'm looking at all the other clarinetists. And my son's sitting on the edge of his seat, perfect upright posture and playing. And I mean, I kept nudging my wife, look at his posture. It's amazing. He's focused on it. And it's something that we've focused on, over the years, just to remind them that, hey, look, if you want to appear taller, if you want to appear in better health and look better, posture is a big part of that. So standing up straight really does help with how you appear to other people. So bragging on my kids a little bit, I was very proud to see that, but I was shocked to see how many other kids were exhibiting that poor posture. And if it's starting there, it's everywhere.
It's
It's
everywhere.
rampant.
And especially think about, a clarinetist, they have to support their breath.
Uh-huh.
Right. And it's way easier to do that when you're sitting upright and you've opened up your
100%.
chest, you open up your diaphragm, than when you're slumped. As soon as you slump, you really close your breath. And think about, being a clarinetist, like that's all about breath control.
Yep.
So, it'll also make him better at his task there.
Absolutely. And if you
Yeah.
think about what we do on a regular basis, I mean, you and we spend a lot of time at a computer, even though we're movement professionals. I spend a lot of time with clients, but we're designing classes. We still spend time on the computer, and I still see clients via Zoom. So
Yeah.
I am still seeing people online, and I'm seeing my own posture become, slightly worse and worse. And I have to remind myself, okay, sit up nice
Yep.
and tall,
Exactly.
head in the right
Don't,
position.
don't sink into the computer screen.
Oh my gosh. I actually was writing a class. I was designing a course on posture.
Yeah.
And every 3 or 4 slides, I found myself leaning into the screen and say, sit up straight. Dang it. Sit up straight. You're writing about this at any time. Now should be the time I'm more focused on it. But I kept finding myself leaning forward. And maybe that's eyes. My eyes are no longer as good as they used to be. Granted. But still, I found myself really leaning into that. And we're aware of our posture. We're aware of movement.
Mm-hmm.
Our clients really aren't. How many of them throughout the day are going to be in even partially good posture in front of their computer? I'm going to say very few.
Yeah, hanging out at Bounce Body's headquarters and walking around the sales floor where everybody's on their phone, it's like this is ordinary. This isn't
Yep.
extraordinary. This is just ordinary people sitting at their jobs in front of a computer, and nobody's sitting upright.
No.
Nobody. And the other thing too. So if you're thinking about this, if you're prone to tension headaches, just pay attention. Pay attention to your
Yes.
ergonomic position. If you are a computer user, which we all are, is your computer set up for you?
Yeah.
I spend inordinate amounts of time at a coffee shop just because that's kind of where I end up. And and I'm looking around all these people working on their laptops at a coffee shop. So the laptops are too low. They're sitting in a funky
Mhm.
position, and their head is looking at their laptop, or they're on their phones. And they can be, they can be doing that for hours. This isn't something that they do casually, it's something they do for hours. So be aware of that. Like, bring something to lift up your laptop. There's those little tiny little lifters that I know I've seen people have. Just bring it up so that you've got Brian's got one up on the screen. They're small, they're
They're
light,
cheap.
They're
They're
cheap.
five
Exactly.
bucks.
Exactly. Just something to bring it closer to eye level. If somebody's at a desk, is their computer the right height? Is it the right distance away?
Yes.
I had to get glasses that were, because I need a little bit of magnification, I had to get glasses that were designed for my computer distance away from me.
Yeah.
Right. So I have one set of glasses that I use for reading when my hands are closer, and I have another set of glasses for reading my screen, which is more like 30 inches away or 25 inches away. So
Yep.
those little things, I know those are fussy, but those are the things that will make a difference over time for you, because that's where you spend so much time, and that's where, again, if you're somebody who works at a computer, which most of us do, or on a phone, that's where you're creating those habits that can lead to those tension headaches.
And I'm going to say this, almost everybody who sits at a desk should have a monitor, as well as if they're running off of their laptop. I know there are a
Yep.
lot of workplaces now that have sort of these floating offices where people just come in and they sit down at whatever desk is available and they
Mhm.
work off of their laptop. I get that. But I have to tell you, when I work on my laptop, I find myself hunched over, and I've got a
Yep.
big laptop. It's not quite as big as yours, but it's a good size, 16-inch. It's a decent size. But I still find myself looking down at the
Yeah.
screen
Yeah.
because it's even on my desk.
It's
Whereas
not
I'm
eye
looking at my,
height. It's
it's
chest
not
height.
eye
I
height.
mean,
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So get a monitor and a decent sized one that can adjust. Mine actually adjusts up and down. I actually,
Me
believe it
too.
or not, bought a gaming computer because they're a little
Hmm.
larger. And I guess they're meant for people to play on longer periods of time. So I can raise it up and down. It raises up really easily up and down, and it works wonderfully. It's slightly curved, so that helps too. But I got to tell you, it works wonders at keeping me looking straight ahead instead of down all the time.
The other thing, so thinking about eyes, so we've talked a little bit about just, again, where is the focal distance that you're playing with? Because remember, the occiput and really the whole neck posture is
Hmm.
directly related to the eyes. Whatever the eyes are doing, the neck is reflecting that. That's just how that is. I often
Yep.
think of the eyes lead the head and the neck absolutely, like
Yep.
unless you're visually impaired. So with that in mind, thinking too about playing with some eye exercises, and these
Yep.
can be a little bit wacky, just so you know. They really can. I've had clients where I start this process very gently and very slowly.
Yes.
And a lot of this is simply just moving your eyes gently, like just moving your eyes up, moving your eyes down, moving your eyes right, moving your eyes left. Even moving your eyes from corner to corner and corner to corner, like you're drawing an X with your eyes. And just starting with just those gentle eye movements, very like
Hmm.
5 reps of each. And some people will say, "Oh my God, that gives me a headache."
Exactly.
Because they're so unused to using their eyes in their full range of motion. But that also says that instead of using their eyes to move, they're using their neck to adjust their head
Yes.
position. Their eyes are staying in one place and their head is moving.
Yep.
So I've had people very, very gently work on the eyes. So just like we do with like the ball going side to side, up and down, little corners, same thing with the eyes, just a gentle right, left, up, down, and then little diagonals. And just a little tiny bit of that, oftentimes with your eyes closed, when
Yep.
you're lying down, when you're relaxed, maybe 4 or 5 reps of each, can just start to train the eye muscles so that they're taking some of the load off the neck muscles, which is a funny way
Yeah.
to think about it. And that's especially true for people who wear glasses, because when you wear glasses, especially if you've got like progressive lenses, your eye, your eye is focusing through a very small space, and oftentimes isn't moving from that space because that's the only place that it can see whatever it's looking at. Right? It's
Yep.
fuzzy around that, and that really limits how the eyes move. They stay in a very small range. So that's another thing to think about, is training your eyes to have a little more mobility.
I love that. And first time I learned about this was a client that was going through concussion therapy.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yep.
because there's a lot of vestibular stuff going on, that she was doing a lot of eye training. And it was sort of I'd never really thought about it before. But it made a lot of sense because every time she would overuse her eyes, she would get these massive headaches and they would really sort of ignite the concussion like symptoms,
Yep.
especially if they're reactive, sort of if I were to throw a ball, just the tracking of the ball could make a huge difference in how she felt, and that was something that, made a huge difference for, her. And it really, it reminded me that there's more to what we do than simply, pick heavy object up, put down again, sort of thing,
Well, I
which,
mean, we're used to working with the big muscles, right?
uh-huh.
I mean, that's what we train. We train quads and hamstrings and glutes and, blah, blah, blah. But the eyes also have little tiny muscles that, again, then relate really quite directly to whatever's happening in the whole cervical spine.
Yeah.
And so, training the muscles, the tiny muscles and the big muscles is really, really helpful for somebody.
Yeah. I will say this, I wanted to get back to the sort of seated postural type of
Mhm.
stuff.
Yeah.
I want to challenge everybody. And this is what I do for a lot of clients is I'll teach them what we consider cervical neutral, which is where
Hmm.
their head should roughly be. And look, it's not going to stay there forever. Nobody can, because we move our head all the time. I mean, it's designed for that. We have an incredible amount of range of motion from our cervical spine. But just find that and set an alarm for at your desk every 30 minutes. When it goes off, ask yourself, are you in cervical neutral? Are you in a good postural position? It's always no. I mean, I've yet to
Yeah.
hear someone
It's
say,
always
oh,
no.
yeah, I found myself in it. But as soon as it goes off, you straighten up, hold that position, hold it for 5 seconds where you're conscious of it, and then let it go. Go back to what
Exactly.
you're doing.
Exactly.
5 seconds, not 30
Yep.
seconds, not 2 minutes, 5 seconds, small amount, and then let it go.
We talk about that a lot whenever you and I are talking about posture training. And I know that's been the most effective way that I've trained myself or
Yep.
anybody else. Like I think about, again, somebody who sits at a computer 8 hours a day or whatever they do. It's like it's very difficult. I mean, some of us do it naturally over time or have learned to really sit up straight because honestly, for me, it makes me feel a whole lot better. Otherwise, I hurt. So I do. But for a lot of clients, that's not how it is. So training them to have not just the awareness, but also the postural endurance
Yep.
really takes time to develop. Most people, if you have them really sit up tall when they're doing their computer work and they're not used to it, they'll get exhausted. They'll be fatigued in their upper back, fatigued in their neck. They'll be like, and they'll go back to their slump where the chair is supporting them and they aren't using as much muscular support. So that idea of, every hour, every half hour, just holding that good, better position with awareness for 5 seconds, build up to 30 seconds, build up to a minute, and then forget about it. I also say, like, don't obsess about it all the time. That's often not,
Yeah.
that often causes more trouble than it solves. Like focus on
Yep.
it for a short period and then let it go. Short
Yep.
period and let it go.
Yep.
Yeah, I love that.
I'm also going to put this in there. Don't make radical changes to your
Yeah.
seat, your
Yep.
seat position.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I've had someone say, guess what I got? I'm going to be sitting on a
Uh-huh.
ball at my desk from now on.
Uh-huh.
I'm like, oh,
Yep.
have you tried that for 8 hours? I said,
Yep.
let me know how you feel tomorrow because your body's going to revolt. Or remember the kneeling chair
Uh-huh.
where you're kneeling and it was
Yeah,
supposed
yeah.
to have better upright posture? It
Yeah.
can be great. I know people who still use those, but to
Yeah.
go from a regular seat to that chair and to do it immediately, no questions asked. Maybe if I'm 18, I could do it. But now at 50, my body is going to not be happy the next day. And I'm probably going to find bad postural habits while sitting in those new positions on a ball or on
Yes.
those kneeling chairs. I'm
Yes.
probably going to find a way to have my body slump in a way that's even
Yeah.
going to hurt me more.
So we often try to go on and on about moderation, right? Moderation is like I think one of our watchwords, but in this case,
Yeah.
it's true. Whether you're changing shoes, whether you're changing foot gear, whether you're changing what you sit on, whether you're changing how you stand, like whether you're changing your walking, your gait, like anytime you're trying to change any of those patterns, take it in small nuggets. And
Small.
and sitting again, if you sit 8 hours a day, which many people do, like if you're going to change it, think about, okay, I've got both chairs hanging out in my cube for a while, right? Start with 10 minutes on the new
Yep.
chair and then go back to the old one. And then maybe 10 more minutes on the new chair, come back to the old one. So it's that same idea because especially something you do habitually, and then I'll talk about cars in a minute because it's another place that I think about this.
Yes.
Right, like if you're going to change how you're sitting, then really make that adjustment gradually. Yeah, and let your body adapt and see if it does adapt. Sometimes I know I'm thinking of a chair that's sitting under my desk right now. I thought this looks like a great idea. No, it's a terrible idea. I cannot adjust to it. It makes me fall asleep within about 5 minutes. Like this is just a bad thing. But you don't know that till you try it. And like I've tried
Yeah.
it, I've given it a good shot. It was a failure. So it's going to go out onto the curb and somebody will pick it up and I'll find some other option. But that's
Yeah.
kind of something to think about as well.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned cars, and you and I both travel and getting into new rental cars. I'm a car guy. I love to try out new vehicles, but I will say this: seats and headrest
Oh
positions
my God,
are horrible.
they're horrible.
You know,
I
every
mean,
single seat wants the head to be so far forward.
and it's it's funny because I'm very flat in my thoracic. My head for most people sits really far back compared to a lot of people, and especially now I feel like car seats are designed to slump. They're either
Yes, they
designed for
are.
somebody who's got a really thick rib cage, and so
Yep.
their head is sitting a little forward because their rib cage is so wide, or it's just designed to support the slump. Because
Yep.
half the time that headrest is like, I mean, I'm making a very silly face here on video, but like that's how far forward it pushes my head.
100%.
And one thing that I always say this because as a new Pilates teacher, many people as new Pilates teachers spend a lot of time looking down at their clients, right, with their head in that
Yeah.
15 to 30-degree position forward, right? So everybody gets what I call Pilates neck in that first year of teaching because they're also like they're a little
Focus.
anxious. They're focused. They're trying to figure all that out. And and so one of the things that I would say, this was just my classic thing, was all right. So talking about doing a little bit of posture training in daily life. If you have stop signs between, you're driving between
Mm,
here and your house, every stop sign, bring your head back to your headrest and just gently retract your head, like engaging
nice.
again those back postural muscles just for the time you're at the stop sign.
Yep.
Depending on how that is, it could be a few seconds, it could be a little bit longer. And then, go ahead, or at the stop light, put your head back and really press gently into it to get that gentle retraction, open up those upper cervicals and train some of those postural muscles to hold you back.
Yeah.
And that really helped. Like I would do that all the time myself. Like I'd be in my car and I'd just, okay, come back, come back, come back. And that
Yep.
just really helped to, again, get my head stronger and get my whole neck and area stronger so that I could support that position for longer.
Yeah, this is a great idea. Great idea. I often tell people if you're going to buy a new car, make sure the seat works for you. Make sure
Yeah,
that the headrest
yeah.
works for you. My
Mhm.
wife spent years dancing in high school and college. She's got great posture, which is wonderful. But she bought a car. She loved everything about it. And she realized pretty fast that the headrest was not adjustable.
Uh-huh.
And it shoved her head so far forward. She said, I'm so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And literally, I had to remove the headrest. And fortunately, I just turned it around. It was removable. So I just lifted it up, turned it around, and put it back in. And suddenly her head could sit straight. And she said, oh, that works out great.
Yeah.
We got lucky that it was able to, because some you can't
Yeah.
do that.
Absolutely.
So when looking at a new vehicle, I highly, highly recommend make sure that your head is in good position, your back is in good position, that you can really be comfortable, because most of us have long commutes now, and you don't want to be in a position that's going to put you in, a position where your neck is going to be uncomfortable for 20, 30, 60 minutes at a time.
Right. And I think about my mom, and my mom's favorite driving posture was like her head was actively moving forward at all times. She's like, that was my mom, like, what's happening in the future? That was kind of where she lived. So I could always picture her in the seat next to me, like her head was never against that headrest. It was always like, looking at what's happening out there. And I think about that, and it's like that's a very common posture. Like think about how often your head is actually against the headrest.
Yeah.
For a lot of
Yeah.
people, it's never because their head
Never.
is slightly forward. So even just that idea of thinking about staying in contact with that headrest,
Yeah.
and again adjusting it for your ergonomics. Now, I also terms of car seats, I've used little lumbar rolls. I've played with like a little wedge seat. Like there's all kinds of little tools that you can play with to make sure it's a little more comfortable for you. But ideally, it starts out pretty darn good. I think that's a useful thing if you've got that option. Not everybody has an opportunity to change their cars, but next time you do, think about that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Something I wanted to bring up that I've had great success with, besides just working on those muscles and getting people to retract, is mobility and flexibility.
Yeah.
But teaching them how to stretch properly.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say this, most people, when they try and stretch their neck muscles, they will drop their chin to their chest and they will jam their head downward, or
Yep.
take it to the side and jam their ear toward their shoulder.
Yep.
And all you're doing is really compressing that portion of the spine that's, if you're forward,
Right.
that front side of your spine is just compressing. The side when you're going laterally is just compressing. And what I tell students and what I tell clients is, I want you to think about when you're going forward that you're taking the back of your head and taking it away from your body. So
Like
you're
you're going
elongating.
around something.
Yeah.
Like are you
Almost
going
like you got
up
a
and
long.
over something? Yeah,
Exactly.
like you're going over an orange, or something like that. So you're not just crunch. Yeah, and
Exactly.
same thing with the side. You're not just side, crunching. It's like that up and over quality.
Yep. And it's pulling it
Yeah.
away, almost like you're
Mm-hmm.
tractioning that side that you're trying to
Mm-hmm.
stretch, like you're
Yep.
tractioning it away. And also I take that arm of the side that I'm stretching and try and reach down, grab my pants leg, grab the underside of a chair, whatever can actually just help hold that shoulder down. It really helps to add to the stretch because I'm tractioning those muscles one side as I go to the opposite.
Yeah, I often just like take one hand behind my back, pull that arm down, and
Sure.
then reach away from it. I'm kind of showing this on YouTube, not that that
Yep.
matters, but right. And just so then I'm getting that tissue stretch
Yep.
right along the top of my shoulder, along my upper trap, and all the way up into my neck. And then I also like to take the side bend and then very gently, being the critical thing here, look to the
Yep.
other side and then look back forward. And then any neck stretch, come out of it slowly.
Slowly.
Right. So that there's a critical thing. Like you do that with a lot of stretches. There's nothing ballistic about a neck stretch ever.
No.
It should be very gently gone into, again, with that wonderful up and over quality.
Up and
So
over.
you're
I love
really
that thought.
keeping as
Yep.
much length as you can, and very gently moving into it, very gently moving out of it.
Yes.
If you don't, that's when you run into trouble.
Absolutely. I mean, there's no
Yeah.
question. What I've done also to help with that tractioning is get a heavy band,
Mm-hmm.
stand on it,
Yeah.
and
Uh-huh.
tension it, and then stand upright because it's going to pull your shoulder down.
Right.
But as I take my head to the opposite side, it still is allowing a little bit of movement. It's
Mm-hmm.
not sort of
It's elastic.
locking it into place. It's elastic.
Yeah.
It's not locking
Yeah.
into place. Whereas sometimes when I hold on to a chair, well, the chair is not going to move, or the leg of a chair, it's not going to move. Whereas this allows for a little bit of that elasticity that is a little more forgiving for the tissues.
Yeah, absolutely. And then to take this, so that there's definitely mobility is important. I think the ball work is good for that. I think even just just gently moving the head from side to side and a little forward, a
Mhm.
little back, and circling, and all those things are really useful too. Just to remind yourself not to like keep your head forward all the time.
Yep.
But the other thing too is looking at one thing I think about is the upper traps. And one thing that there's a lot of emphasis in posture on shoulders down, shoulders down, shoulders down, which is great. And that's wonderful. But one of the things that I find is oftentimes that means that people's upper traps aren't working dynamically to go up and down.
Yeah.
And then those upper traps I find get really kind of fibrotic and stiff and weak and undernourished, so that then sometimes I'll have clients just shrug their shoulders, and after 5 they're exhausted.
Yeah. Yep.
Right, and those muscles are like just completely fatigued, and that tells me that there's not good circulation through this whole area, which is really important. Same thing
Mhm.
with the levator, right, scapulae. So one other little thing I'll have people do is just very gently, like 5 times, just shoulders up,
Yep.
shoulders down, shoulders up, shoulders down, 5 times. And if that wears them out, just do 5 every day for a while,
Yep.
and then slowly build that up. because that's going to nourish those muscles, which I want those muscles to be healthy, to be resilient, and to have good
Mhm.
blood flow, because that's going to keep that whole area from stiffening up.
Yeah. I will also have them do shoulder circles.
Uh-huh.
Uh, just taking it up and around and
Yeah,
back and down and do
yeah.
you can do both directions. I find going front to back seems to feel better for most people. I found that doing the other way from back and sort of up and around and forward, people say sometimes their shoulders get a little crunchy.
Well, it's
It
also
doesn't
that's where
feel
people
as good.
spend all their life. I mean, my
Bingo.
feeling is I kind of want to counterbalance. This is where
Counter it.
people tend to go. So I like to go back just because I feel like that's probably not what they're doing much of.
Precisely, precisely. So that's something that I will have them do. Again, start with 5. And that's something else. If you wanted to set an alarm, do that at your desk. For
Yeah.
people who are suffering from those tension headaches, you know, changing the postural position, having a little bit of mobility, getting their shoulders, doing shoulder circles or raising the shoulders toward the ears. All of these things are going to get more blood flow to the area. They're going to get you in proper neck position. And it brings awareness to the area without hyper awareness where I can't move. I must be a statue. No, you want it to be able to hold that dynamic position, move around it, work a little bit with stretching, and then go back to your life.
Right. And one other last little thing on there is, since we're talking about ergonomics so much with this, is your pillow and your sleeping
Oh,
scenario.
yeah.
One of the things that somebody taught me, some chiropractor taught me, which I thought was slightly cruel and slightly perfect, is I have clients who have really chronic neck tension and tension headaches who sleep on their stomach with their head rotated to one
Yep.
side, right? And it's like that is just not going to be good over time. So what he said was he has them wear a T-shirt that has a pocket, like a little pocket on the front of the T-shirt, and he sews a tennis ball into the pocket.
Yep.
So every time they roll onto their stomach, they're like stabbed by that, and it reminds them not to sleep on their stomach. So I think that's also, for many people that I know, that is a really critical piece: is what is their sleeping position like? If they've got, like, again, I've got a super flat back of my head, and I've been in hotels where the pillow is like this hard giant lump. So I lie on it, and my head is like 6 inches forward because it's a really hard pillow. And a lot of times, then I'll just throw the pillow out. I take a towel, roll it up under my neck, and sleep flat. So that's the other thing, is how do you setting your pillow up so that it's not putting tension into your neck all night.
Now I'm going to say the exact opposite of that too, because I've got a very large thoracic cavity. So for
Yeah.
me, I go into hotels and I need more than just one pillow because hotels really want to be fancy. So they put down pillows, but they don't give you any support. So my head goes flop right through the pillow.
Right.
I feel no support. And if I
Yep.
use 2, it's like I'm being strangled by a goose. I mean, it's just my neck, they're around my head and I can't move my head at all. And it's like, okay, there's got to be an in between here. So I'll often try and request a foam pillow if they have them. But what I've discovered, go into the bathroom and get a towel or 2 and fold them up and put it underneath your pillow. It'll raise it up an inch, 2 inches, not very much, but enough so that for me, I actually feel like I get a little bit of support with that down pillow and I can
Nice.
sleep on my side or on my back. I mentioned
Yep.
this to my wife and she just immediately said, I can't believe I never thought of this. And again, the pillows at hotels, depending on the level of hotels, they're usually, some are pretty plush. You can just use one, and lay it, sort of open it up and lay it flat, so it's like a triple folded, and it's just that right height and it works really, really well. So you got to figure out what's going to work for you, much like I'm the crazy guy that if I go to buy a new pillow, I am lying in the store on the floor. I'm sorry. I don't care. I want to make sure this works before I spend, money bringing a pillow home. So I will try the different sizes and be like, nope, too hard. Nope, too soft. And I feel like Goldilocks here trying to figure that out. But when you find the right one, you're like, okay, I'll give this one a shot, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
that you got to figure out what's going to work for you. And nowadays, there's so many different ergonomic pillows of all shapes and sizes. Find out what feels best for you, what's comfortable, can you sleep on all night, and you don't wake up with your neck going, oh man, did I sleep funny last night?
Exactly. Exactly. So we've spent this has really been like ergonomics 101.
It really was. It
Right?
kind of was. It started with headaches, but really it's about a lot of ergonomics.
Looking at your desk, looking at your car, looking at your pillows, looking at your posture, which is critical, looking at mobility, looking at some strength, looking at release work.
Yep,
Um, this is a very neglected part of the body in
it
both
is.
in Pilates and in personal training. We kind of train from here down. I mean, a lot.
Yeah,
I think a lot, but this is really an area where if this is out of whack, it causes pain, it causes tension, it causes all kinds of issues, and oftentimes we don't address it so directly physically. So I think looking at all these pieces, thinking about how you're sitting, how you're standing, how you're walking, your pillows, your car, etc., is really helpful for decreasing tension headaches, increasing posture, and really just managing that whole head and neck area better.
yeah, yeah. And we're really specifically talking about the muscles of the neck today. We're not getting into general posture, because we've talked about that before, and we can come back to that topic in the future, talking about the posterior shoulder girdle, your back muscles, your upper back muscles and things, because those are all very important. Don't get me wrong, very important. But these are some very specific things that you can do to help release some of that tension, to get rid of some of that muscular tension headache, because that really, I can't tell you how many clients have had that. And if you just teach them some quite gentle things to do on a regular basis, it really can ease this up in the long run.
Now I'm going to take one last stab at this, which is also looking at breathing, because I
Mm,
think about a lot of my clients with really intense cervical issues tend to be breathers, and what they're doing is they're basically using their neck muscles, in particular
neck breathers.
scalenes, to lift their rib cage up, to
Yep.
help them breathe. So the other thing too is to really have people work on breathing through their diaphragm, through their bottom of their rib cage, taking the tension out of the top of the rib cage. That's one thing I wanted to make sure that I mentioned too. Is breathing
Yeah.
is another key piece of that.
Yeah.
People who are upper thoracic breathers oftentimes create tension because they're using all those neck muscles every single breath.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had a number of clients do that. And just getting them to breathe properly, I find putting them on a foam roller or spine
Yep,
fit, or something that they can lie on longitudinally with their spine, sort of in line with their spine, and just getting them to feel their ribs and letting
yep.
their ribs, widen. Can you feel it when you breathe wide? Can you feel it when you breathe? Can you feel your diaphragm and your belly pulling it long away from your head? Just trying to get your rib cage and your diaphragm to work together to really provide more movement, rather than your rib cage being so stuck and everything basically being up and down, rather than allowing that natural, gentle movement.
Which also stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system as opposed to sympathetic nervous system, and sympathetic nervous system activation, that kind of adrenaline fight or flight quality, creates tension through this whole area. And if you
Yeah,
can really calm that down and get more into parasympathetic, it also can calm down sometimes some neck and shoulder tension.
absolutely. Well, we covered quite a bit today.
There we go. You never know where we're going to go, do we, Brian?
At the beginning, before we started recording, I said, this might be a short one. I don't know. And it's like, well, no, we covered a full hour. And I feel like if we wanted to, we could keep going with the topic. So it's an important topic, and something that chances are, at least one client or someone in your life who has tension headaches or has these issues. So hopefully we gave you a few tips and tricks that can help them or help you, so that in the future, you can have less and less of these, headaches, and hopefully improve your posture and neck positioning.
Awesome.
Yeah. So thank you guys for joining us. We really appreciate it. As always, hit that like and subscribe button. We really appreciate it. Comment, please. Comment, share, do all of those things. You can always reach out to us at movingconvos@gmail.com. That's the best way to get in touch with us. Also, Instagram, Moving Convos. And check us out on YouTube as well under my name, Brian Ritchie. You can watch us, sort of in person as we do our little, you can watch our heads dance. So for Nora St. John, I'm Brian Ritchie. We'll see y'all next week.
Hey, guys.